When it comes to the heel face dynamic, those lines have been blurred for quite a while now. Even more so in current day, as we see a lot of wrestlers have kind of transcended the whole traditional heel persona. As we saw with the Judgment Day iteration of Rhea Ripley, the Bloodline version of Sami Zayn, and even the Tribal Chief Roman Reigns. But yet, even with that being said, the heel persona is still a wrestling ideology that holds true to this day. Because when we take into consideration the likes of MJF, Christian Cage, and especially Dominic Mysterio, these are the type of heels that we not only hate, but we love to hate them. But unfortunately, once again, this is one of those things that does not translate very well into the WWE 2K series, neither from a player or AI perspective. The fact of the matter is, the heel mechanic is void of any trace of substance. And I, for one, would love for 2K and Visual Concepts to realize that being a heel consists of more than just low blows or dirty pins or the crowd's alliance with you. There's an actual method to the madness, a psychology, a persona, a personality that goes into it. To put a spin on a popular adage, all heels were not created equal. We have the cowardly or obnoxious heels like, a heel Miz or the Dominic Mysterios. The arrogant and overly boisterous like the Gunthers or MJFs of the world, the tyrant types like Solo, and then we have what I like to call the crash outs, the evil and sadistic, just downright diabolical heels like the Drew McIntyres and even the Bronson Reeds as of late. So in this one, we're going to be talking about the anatomy of heel wrestling and what it could mean for this series. And more importantly, how it can help diversify heel wrestling, especially in terms of AI and logic. So WGC, welcome back to the channel. All glory to God. Thank y'all for rocking with your boy, and let's work. To start off from the very top, which in this case will be entrances, I would love the ability to be able to play into their heel persona right off the jump. A cool way I think that 2K and Visual Concepts can put that type of control into players' hands is with interactive entrances. And when I say interactive, I don't mean the cosmetic things like changing the camera angles or setting off pyros. I mean legitimate interactions that sees your wrestler interacting with the crowd or his opponent in some way. One of the best examples I have of this is Cody Rhodes during his entrance. Sometimes he will stop to actually give a fan his weight belt. Bret Hart is also another great example, as we see a lot of times he will often stop and give one lucky fan his custom Hitman shades during his entrance. Rey Mysterio is also another one that has meaningful interactions with the crowd. Oftentimes, we'll see him acknowledge the little kids that don the Rey Mysterio lucha mask. Basically, I would just love to see 2K and Visual Concepts give this type of freedom to players and allow us to choose if we want to perform these actions during our entrances. And I know I gave a lot of face type interactions for the examples, but there's also a lot of interactions that we could perform on the heel side of things. I would love to be able to see heels stop and argue with the crowd, tear up crowd signs, maybe threaten the cameraman. But it doesn't have to stop there. Maybe let us taunt our opponent that's already in the ring. Imagine if it's a championship match and you're the challenger, maybe you could stop in the middle of the ramp and do the title belt taunt, aka the discount double check for you god-awful Aaron Rodgers fans out there. Or better yet, what if you're the champion? You should be able to stop ringside and maybe taunt your opponent with the belt. Interactions like these would not only breathe new life into entrances themselves, but it also just help players play up that heel persona. But moving on to some of the things I would actually like to see inside of the ring, I would love to see the return of some of those beginning of the match options that we had in past games. The fake handshakes, the taunts, maybe even a slap in the face to get under your opponent's skin and kind of agitate them before the match begins. As I stated earlier, the heel dynamic is more than just a dirty moveset. So I would love to see 2K and VC kind of lean into this truth and give us more personality and persona-based actions. This next thing may be a bit of a stretch, but I would personally like to see like some heel-based selling. Oftentimes when a face wrestler has the upper hand, the heel wrestler will typically sell away from their opponent by either crawling, rolling, or stumbling in the opposite direction in an attempt to create some space. And while this may give the appearance that they're running, a lot of the times it's just a strategy to lure their opponent into a counterattack. But as I said, at the very least, it does help create some space. So I would maybe like to see these sales maybe come off as some sort of passive skill to where it just makes it harder for your opponent to follow up with any kind of offense. Speaking of which, this is a perfect segue to talk about the heel style rollout. Again, a lot of times when a face wrestler has the upper hand, a heel wrestler will roll out to escape any further incoming offense. But what separates this from your typical rollout is the heel's reaction. A lot of times during a rollout, they will become visibly frustrated, and that could come in the form of throwing a tantrum, or it could be something as simple as an angry stare. But the main point is you can see their personality shine through in these moments. It just goes to show that with a few subtle mannerisms and facial expressions, it could drastically separate a heel style rollout from any other type of rollout. And to take things a step further, I would like to see these rollouts be even further beneficial for heel wrestlers. Because another thing that will happen during these rollouts is after the heel is done throwing his tantrum, he will then tell the ref to make his opponent back up so that he may enter the ring. I think this would be a cool way for heel wrestlers to kind of force a reset and basically take away any chance for his opponent to have any sort of follow-up offense. So not only would this add an extra layer to the rollout feature, but it would shine some light on the personality aspect of things and giving some much needed attention and detail to the persona mechanic. Heel actions is another area of gameplay that I feel could use some substantial upgrades. I mean, if we keeping it a stack, there's not a lot to work with. Outside of the brass knucks, low blows, and maybe placing your feet on the ropes, seriously, what else is there? I guess we could throw in the poison mist, but even if we were to throw that on the table, there's still very slim pickings. And the crazy thing is, there's not like there's a lack of inspiration because there's a ton of things that they could draw from. One thing I mentioned before is giving eye rakes and eye pokes a purpose. I mean, because if they're supposed to be legitimate illegal moves, then why not respect them and treat them as such? Personally, I suggest that they make them paybacks and even giving them their own unique selling animations that would basically render your opponent defenseless. So during the entirety of the selling animation, they would be unable to counter or mount any sort of offense. This would be a perfect setup for signatures and finishers. Illegal holds is another aspect that would help round out the heel gameplay. Things like choke holds, rope assistant submissions, and holding on to submissions after the rope break. These are all considered very useful heel tactics. But of course, in the WWE 2K series, there's a huge problem. How can we have illegal moves if there are no rules in place to enforce said rules? I mean, you can't exactly break a rule if that rule doesn't exist. And if you know me or seen any of my content, you know exactly where I'm going with this. But just for the sake of those who might be new and just to reiterate, feel free to join in and repeat after me. Bring back the 5 count. Not only does the 5 count help legitimize this game as a real wrestling experience, but it would also help with expanding and advancing the heel gameplay. I would also like to add that I feel like illegal holds need a legitimate purpose. Whether we use them for draining stamina or momentum, there needs to be a reason or better yet a reward for using them. Speaking of another aspect of gameplay that actually needs a purpose, arguing with the ref just feels like one of those features that is there simply for aesthetic appeal. I could be wrong because the couple of times I did it, I didn't really see any benefits from it. And if that's the case, I would actually like to see this change and give it some legit purpose. And it doesn't have to be anything overpowered or overly complicated. Something along the lines of if you get through the entire animation of arguing with the ref, then maybe you'll be rewarded with an advantage in the pinfall meter. However, if your opponent manages to catch you off guard while you're arguing with the ref, then you'd basically be a sitting duck so they could hit you with something like a signature or finisher. Or if they decided to go for a roll-up pin, then they would have an advantage in the pinfall meter. Another cool thing I would like to see is different animations for this interaction. The typical reaction for this sequence is just a back and forth exchange of words. But there are those instances where no words are needed, especially with specific wrestlers. All it takes is just a look and the ref gets the point. This is typically the case with the wrestlers that are more intimidating in stature. But of course, nobody quite intimidates a ref like The Undertaker. I would love to see Taker's death stare make it into the game as a way to intimidate the ref. I just think this would go absolutely crazy. Keeping with the theme of the ref shield is another thing I feel like that just needs to make a return, man. It's another useful heel tactic that can create some dope gameplay opportunities. I'm not going to go too far into detail with this because I believe I already spoke to this in the ref video I did last year. If you have not gotten a chance to check that out, I would urge you to do so, man. I think it's some pretty cool stuff in there. And crazy enough, some of the things that I asked for in that video actually came to fruition. So that was pretty dope in itself. But I do believe one thing I did not cover in that video is actually being able to perform this ability from different positions. In the older games, I think we'd only pull this off from the standing position, but I would love if they made this available from all positions. For example, you should be able to activate this if an opponent is running at you so you can kind of dodge out of the way and let the ref catch the stray. Or we could pull things off from a grounded position as we've seen most recently with MJF versus Daniel Garcia. Bottom line, using the ref to either stop an incoming attack, weaponize them against your opponent, or to just take them out so that you can engage in some more sinister deeds at their unfortunate demise is always going to be a welcome heel gameplay addition. Another oldie but goodie I would love to see is pulling on the old trunks. No Diddy, but y'all know what I mean, the basic roll-up pin with pulling the tights. Again, this is another one that doesn't need much explanation. Not sure why it was ever removed in the first place. Just bring it back. They could legit treat this in the same manner as the putting your feet on the ropes. Only thing I would say is to avoid spamming. The more you use it, the least effective it is. Meaning not only does it have less effect on the pinfall meter, but there's also a higher chance that the ref will catch you trying to pull the tights, thus effectively putting an end to the pinfall attempt. Now let's turn our attention to some outside of the ring tactics. And in this case, the very first thing that comes to mind is interacting with the crowd. Things like arguing with the crowd, taunting, ripping up their signs. These are just things that we see heel wrestlers do quite often. It's a welcome detail that would go a really long way in this case. My only ask from 2K and VC is just to bring some creativity to it. I would rather not have everybody doing the same thing with the same motions. Not saying everybody needs to have their own individual sequences, but just mix it up enough to where we don't keep running into the same thing all the time. For example, we could have the sequence where the heel wrestler argues back and forth with the crowd, and then we could have the one where they rip up the crowd sign. But I would also like to see things like maybe flexing at the crowd, or maybe threatening them by throwing a fake punch and then having them react to it. It's not enough to just have the wrestlers react, but the crowd needs to react as well. The initial action of the wrestler and then the reaction from the crowd is what makes the back and forth feel special. But like I said, it's the creativity of these moments is what's going to help them shine through. And I ain't gonna lie, it would be kind of cool to have some of those personalized Easter egg interactions. Maybe the likes of HBK and Triple H can give the crowd their signature DX crotch chop. Maybe we have an action where Logan Paul snatches a bottle of Prime from one of the fans and chugs it. Maybe we even get some interactions where we have the wrestlers stand or sit on the barricade to interact with the fans. Like I keep saying, it's all about creativity. Another aspect of outside interactions that gets surprisingly overlooked a lot is the ability to interact with the announce team. I would love the idea of being able to walk up to Michael Cole and have the very similar reactions like the ones I mentioned with the crowd. The first person that comes to mind with this is Bayley. As you can see, she has some very hilarious interactions with Michael Cole.
A former Team Kick member showing you why. I'm talking about you. He's saying nasty things.
And I know this is the heel video, but just for the sake of creativity, I would like to see something maybe like have CM Punk sit Indian style on the announce table. Or maybe we get a Trick Williams interaction where he walks up to Booker T and does his whoop that trick taunt or something, and Booker T starts doing the ad libs.
I like it. Oh yeah, man.
With the new implementation of the microphones, maybe we could actually get an interaction with the announce team where we could walk up to them and take the headset off of one of them and say like a taunt or something into the mic. Imagine being able to do this with someone like LA Knight or The Rock.
Yeah.
I just feel like this would be another cool way to utilize the voice taunts. And just like I said with the crowd interactions, these interactions need to be mutually interactive. So maybe by interacting with the announce team, we get like some special commentary where they'll kind of focus and talk about the wrestler that interacted with them. But like I said from the very beginning, man, the entire purpose of this video was to show that heel wrestling is more than just a couple of dirty moves and having a crowd boo. Heel wrestling is a form of both character and ring psychology. Hopefully we can get 2K and VC to realize there are a lot of things they can change and implement to make it feel more rewarding to play as a heel. But that's my take on it. So WGC, let me know down in the comments, what do you think about the whole heel face mechanic? What would you like to see them implement, especially in terms of building characters and rounding out the AI and CPU logic? Your thoughts and feedback are always welcome. As always, thank you guys for watching. It is truly, truly appreciated. If you rock with the content, do your boy a favor and go ahead and hit that thumbs up. It really helps out the channel. Subscribe if you have not already. Also, feel free to share the video. I would love to try to get as many eyes on this as possible. But anyway, man, love y'all. All glory to God. Remember to try to be a blessing to somebody. Later, WGC. Yeet.